Welcome to episode 18 of Anglican Unscripted. This is where two men, clergymen, and myself, we talk about things that are Anglican on the Anglican Communion. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Conger, and today is November 14th, 2011.
All right, George, today in history is it's a day long ago, but it's very relevant today. We're going to talk about Pope Pius, the 18th? What was he? The 4th, that's correct. Pope Pius the 4th had a meeting, a Council of Trent, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to be sure I got my facts straight. I'm going off memory here. In that meeting, they kind of put down all things Roman Catholic. It was kind of a response to Martin Luther. It was a response to all the little Protestants of the time that were trying to make hay and make their way. And
Catholic stuff happens, and this was
this is one of them.
This is one of them.
Tell me a little bit more about the council.
Well, 1561 to 1563, the Pope Pius IV called an ecumenical council, even though only Catholics came. Mm-hmm. And they set down the doctrine and dogma of the Roman Catholic Church pretty much up until Vatican II. Mm-hmm. It defined most of the issues that were raised during the Reformation by people like Martin Luther and company, such as what happens during the Mass. Is the Mass a sacrifice? Do we have transubstantiation, consubstantiation? How many sacraments are there? 2, 7? Essentially, the Roman Catholic Church's dogma and discipline was set by this council, and on this day in 1564, the Pope had all the bishops sign off saying, yes, we agree, this is de fide of the faith.
All right, we've made it to episode 18. Nobody's been defrocked, and I haven't disappeared by mystery. All right. We've been talking in episode 16. We talked about a meeting happening in Pawleys Island, which was a reaction to an event. Amia was talking about its new relationship with Rwanda. In episode 17, we talked about the Washington Statement, which was a reaction by some clergy and bishops to what they saw happening in Pawleys Island. They put down a narrative, they put down their opinion after the narrative, and people disagreed with their opinion after the narrative. We're actually going to talk today about the event that caused those two events, and that's a meeting in Rwanda. In June of this year, Bishop Murphy, Canon Kevin Donlin, and Archdeacon Miller flew over to the House of Bishops meeting in Rwanda. From my sources, it was going to be a 2 or 3 day meeting where they were going to sit down and talk about AMIA and Rwanda together. It didn't work out that way. It was short because there was a death of a dignitary that had to be attended. So they sat down and, oh, by the way, this is a 1 day meeting. And by the way, this is the new Rwanda, and we want to talk about transparency and accountability, and we have some questions for you. And, it kind of went downhill from there, right, George?
Yes, I think it's best to say Bishop Murphy probably felt that he was bushwhacked.
Sure.
That the Rwandan bishops had a number of questions for Bishop Murphy and the AMIA, and they focused around 2 general issues. One was the issue of money. The AMIA has long had a practice of what they call 10-10-10. 10% tithe to your Conger parish. Parish sends 10% to Pawleys Island. Pawleys Island sends 10% to Rwanda. Mm-hmm. And the Rwandan bishops wanted an accounting of this money. They didn't see how it was being spent, and they were a little antsy about that.
Sure.
And they also wanted to have a sense of what was their control over the Rwandan mission in America. In other words, this was an outreach of the Rwandan church, yet they didn't feel they had any oversight or control, and they were a little upset about not really feeling that this had their name on it, but they didn't have any authority, they felt.
Right. And from information we have, the next event was called the Storming. Bishop Murphy and Canon Donlin and Archdeacon Miller left in a huff or in a storm, and came back to America. And it's probably my best guess, it was at this point they said, we need to do something because Rwanda isn't the Rwanda we remember, because Kalini is no longer there, and there's only 2 bishops that were there when AMIA was actually formed.
Yes, I mean, there are only 2 bishops. One is the Archbishop, who are currently in the Rwandan House of Bishops, who were there at the start. Mm-hmm. Now, we should say that they did provide some answers at that June meeting on money, for instance.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Archdeacon Miller did provide detailed information. However, the meeting, it wasn't, if you will, received or digested well. So even though the AMIA did present answers to these questions, they didn't seem to be understood.
Or they just weren't satisfactory, whatever. Bishop Murphy and his team are back in American soil, and it's my understanding this is where we came to the point where they're going to form a missionary society. And Bishop Murphy flies back in September to another House of Bishops meeting in Rwanda and presents this to them. And that probably didn't go as well either.
On September 27th, Bishop Murphy met with the Rwandan bishops, and he explained the reasons for this change, and that Rwanda originally set up the Anglican mission in America as a personal prelature of Archbishop Kalini. Mm-hmm. And the new Archbishop, Ruwaje, Bishop Murphy did not feel was as committed to the AMIA as his predecessor was. And the AMIA really wanted to have some continuity, have some structure that would allow them to grow forward without having to worry about what variables there might be in Rwanda. Mm-hmm. So the idea was presented at this meeting in September about changing the AMIA's place in Rwanda. Also, some answers were also given about money, too.
Sure, and Rwanda made it clear that we want AMIA part of Rwanda. But there's the difficulty in communication, and Bishop Murphy or others may not have felt that. Bishop Murphy flies back to America. He meets in Pawleys Island with his some 75 clergy and bishops and says, this is what happened, this is where we're at, and this is what we're looking to do. Now, we have in that now responses from Rwanda. George and I contacted bishops there and said, well, what happened there? And Bishop John, I'm going to really ruin the last name. I'll just call him John Rwanda. What's his last name?
John Ruciana.
Wrote an interesting open letter to Bishop Chuck Murphy and all the AMIA and Rwanda bishops and said what, George?
Well, Bishop Ruciana, who many Americans will know from his work at Trinity Seminary and his frequent trips to the U.S., mm-hmm. Bishop Ruciana said, please, please, please do not go forward with this change. And he wrote an email, which we've been sent a copy of, and I'll read to you the passage that says, I feel obliged to share my concerns. Taking AMIA from its original intent and purposes may distort or derail its destiny. This move may hurt the relationship of AMIA with the province of Rwanda, which stood alone in the whole world for AMIA in the most difficult times. It may be extremely hard to comprehend for the retired Archbishop Kalini, who led AMIA as a mission of Rwanda and now moves with AMIA out of the province during his retirement. So what John Ruciana is saying is, first, the AMIA is being ungrateful. Mm-hmm. We stuck with you when no one else did, and now look what you're doing. And second, you are leaving the province of Rwanda, and you're taking with you Emmanuel Kalini. Now, John Ruciana is not against the AMIA. He closes his letter by saying, I request you to slow down and make consultations with the province of Rwanda and other friendly institutions before you take an important move like this. It is out of a deep groan of my heart and love that I have for AMIA that I say this. So John Ruciana's interpretation of what transpired at that September House of Bishops meeting was AMIA is leaving Rwanda and they're taking Emmanuel Collini with them. And they didn't like that.
No, they didn't. And Bishop John is not the only person to respond this way. There's also a letter that was forwarded to us from the Archbishop of Rwanda, which says almost the same, but in stronger terms.
Yes.
He uses the words cease and desist. So tell me a little bit about this letter.
Well, the letter from the Archbishop, it's dated October 31st, and we have a copy of it. Mm-hmm. And it was sent to all the Rwandan bishops and all the AMIA bishops. And it lays out where the situation stood as of October 31st. The archbishops do not like the idea of this new missionary society. And they're a little concerned about what's going on. And let me read some of the issues that are headlined accusations.
Okay.
There are serious accusations to the House of Bishops that need to be ironed out before moving forward. The interpretation of what is expressed as the painful visit with the House of Bishops in June, the reverse colonialism, the spirit of rebellion and lawlessness, the assumption that the new Archbishop does not make decisions. Now let me just say what has been said here. This is, well, in African terms, this is a smack on the side of the head with a 2x4.
Yeah.
Bishop
Wow.
Murphy is being asked to reflect upon the spirit of rebellion and lawlessness. They're describing the June House of Bishops meeting as painful.
Mm-hmm. Well,
they want him to describe, what are you talking about when you're accusing us Rwandans of reverse colonialism? And why are you saying that this new Archbishop is indecisive?
And if you go further into the letter, they talk about something called a Jerusalem moment. They want to get back together, and the cease and desist part was stop everything until we can have a Jerusalem moment. And in African terms, that's very significant to use those two words together. It means we're all in one accord with it. Stop until we can all agree.
Kevin, can I explain for our Episcopal viewers what this might mean?
Yeah, this is foreign.
Now, in the book of Acts, that's the part after the first four Gospels now. The book of Acts, we have Pentecost, where the Holy Spirit comes upon the nations gathered in Jerusalem and unites all in people of different tongues and different backgrounds, all united together in one faith. So I needed to put that in for our Episcopalians who may not be familiar with the Bible.
Yes,
and
that Jerusalem moment.
That Jerusalem moment is what Archbishop Rwaje wants. He wants the Rwandan House of Bishops and the AMIA to be of one mind, guided together by the Holy Spirit. He does not want the AMIA, and I'll read it, all procedures toward the formation of the new missionary society be halted until we go through the Jerusalem moment. Until the Spirit leads us there, don't go forward.
Herein lies some of the difficulty, and that difficulty is AMIA is probably more beholden to Archbishop Collini, who helped really form the AMIA mission. It was Collini who consecrated Bishop Murphy back in Singapore with some other bishops. Collini was there the whole time, and it's my understanding that AMIA thinks that they're what's the word that they call themselves? Starts with
personal
the P.
prelature.
Yeah, personal prelature of the Archbishop Collini. I think Rwanda thinks that personal prelature goes on to the next archbishop, and you're still part of Rwanda, you're still part of the House of Bishops, and you're still part of the new archbishop.
And the difficulty, and I have sympathy for Bishop Murphy because there is not this continuity, there's not the historical memory among the current members of the House of Bishops of the province of Rwanda. They're having to have things explained to them all over again, and they don't have Archbishop Collini leading the way forward, smoothing things out. But by the same token, the Rwandans, including John Ruciana for example, and we've quoted him in detail, are saying what you are doing is taking yourself out of the Rwandan church. How can you be so ungrateful?
And if you leave the Rwanda church, you left the Anglican church, because we were your connection to the Archbishop of Canterbury and to Anglicans everywhere. And I think that's where Rwanda is coming from in their understanding of what's going on. If not us, where are you going to go? And in the same respect, he is going, well, we can find someone else in other archbishops to form what was a collegiate of or college of archbishops to help with this.
College of Consultors.
Okay, all these big terms for this little layman. It's hard to follow. So now we're going to go on, and there's going to be another House of Bishops meeting December something 21st.
20th or 21st, I'm not sure which, but around that time.
And it's at that point that, according to my sources, Bishop Murphy is going to present to the House of Bishops in Rwanda what the new Mission Society is going to look like in concrete. There's a hint that there's going to be a meeting next week between the Archbishop of Rwanda and Bishop Murphy and some others to iron this more out. But let's just take a step back and talk more about the openness we've seen recently with AMIA in discussing this. You and I have presented questions over the last 3 or 4 weeks, 2 questions we have about this forming story, and the first couple responses were less than informational. The last one was very informational, and I want to thank personally Cynthia Brust and Bishop Murphy for taking time to respond to some of our questions, and I thought we could quickly go over 1 or 2 of those that are really important.
Yes, they responded in detail to the accusations that have been made about financial funny business, about the 10-10-10 principle not working as regards to Rwanda. And Bishop Murphy wrote and told us that there is nothing in the Rwandan constitution and canons that obligates the AMIA to give 10% of its income to the Church of Rwanda. However, they have been giving, and in fact, over the last 10 years, they have been giving approximately 12% of their income. I'm sorry, over the past 7 years, 12% of their income to the Church in Rwanda. So there's no money being held back. It's being given to the general fund of the Church in Rwanda.
And that was a great answer. And once again, George and I thank you for that. It really helps clear things up.
And we asked in particular, is the AMIA leadership in rebellion? Because frankly, that was the strongest charge being leveled by the Archbishop of Rwanda against the AMIA leadership, that they were in rebellion. And Bishop Murphy was very clear that there will be disagreements and different interpretations of something that is a work in process. In other words, the final proposal has not been laid down for the Rwandan bishops to review. So people will have different pieces and parts of it right now, and they may be right, they may not be right, but it's not a done deal. And he went on to say us that at the September meeting, Bishop Murphy was warmly welcomed, and discussions about the possibility of a missionary society were positive, he said. Now, and there is no question of rebellion, and in fact, such language is absurd. So Bishop Murphy is saying that the September meeting was warm, and it's absurd to say that he's in rebellion. Against that, we have the other statements of that the meeting was terrible, and you are in rebellion, and think about these things.
Well, this is something that we'll let them work out, but what we need to do is thank AMIA for being forward about, and answering the questions, but we also want to look at this in the bigger perspective, and that is, why do we report these things? Why is it important that, why is this news? Well, AMIA is a wonderful body here in America that has done great things in planting churches, bringing people to Christ, and restructuring and reformatting, and in the last 10 years has done something very wonderful here in America. But now we take a second look at AMIA, and we see that there's new canons that are making them look more Roman Catholic. We see that there's struggles with Rwanda and AMIA, internal and external. And We know, George and I, from our days in tech and inside tech and outside of tech, that nothing can be fixed in the dark. I can't go out to the garage, which is right on the other side of this wall, and fix my car with the lights closed. Or the lights off. I can't change the oil with the lights off. Things have to be brought out into the light. We have to see what all the issues, and the miscommunication between Rwanda and EMEA is better done openly than closed behind doors. That's, it's ridiculous to think you can fix something that's broken in the dark. Well, the bigger question now, George, is how does this relate to ACNA?
Well, the AMIA has been moving away from ACNA for a number of years. And I think this new missionary structure means that the AMIA is not only moving away from ACNA, they're moving away from Anglicanism. Mm-hmm. Let me explain what I mean by that. In 1997, we had the first Promise movement. In 1998, we had ACOM, the Association of Anglican Congregations on Mission, which John Rogers founded in the Chicago area, I believe, and it was an Illinois not-for-profit corporation. That is the start of the AMIA. In 2000, Bishops Murphy and Rogers were consecrated, and that new organization was, if you will, the Protestant evangelical, drew its people from the Protestant evangelical and charismatic wings of the Episcopal Church. The 2008 canons of the Church of Rwanda that were introduced and written by an American are not Protestant, are not Anglican. For instance,
no, yeah, go ahead.
The Roman Catholic Catechism has a definition of what takes place at the Mass. It is a sacrifice of the Mass. The Anglican Church of Rwanda's canons on the Mass are almost word for word the same as the Roman Catholic canons. In other words, the Anglican Church in Rwanda believes in the real presence. We've gone from having a Protestant revolt, evangelical revolt against the Episcopal Church, to an organization that has a Catholic ecclesiology, a Catholic understanding of the sacrifice of the Mass, that is moving towards 7 sacraments, not 2. They violate a number of the articles of religion. And they're not wanting to come in and come under the ACNA speaks to me of what Archbishop Rawaje was talking about, the spirit of rebellion.
Mm-hmm. And that's the difficulty is EMEA is not who they were. Rwanda isn't who they were. The Episcopal Church is no longer part of the equation. There's another presence here in North America. All this is messy.
And there's a disconnect between the AMI on the ground, which is doing well, it's building churches, it's bringing people to a saving relationship with Jesus Christ. There's a difference between that AMIA and the administration in Pawleys Island. And that's what was behind the Washington document, that there was a disconnect between the people in the pews and the clergy and an organization that was self-perpetuating and not accountable to anyone in Pawleys Island.
Yeah, what EMEA does best, they're the best at. Mm-hmm. Well, if you were looking for a church planting organization, EMEA is it. If you're looking for faithful bishops dedicated to church planting, EMEA. If you're looking for clergy who know how to plant churches, EMEA again. They do some things very well and are by far the standard in that area. But there's some things that,
But it's that Anglican piece. In other words, Bishop John Ruciana is worried that you are taking our retired archbishop and leaving the province of Rwanda. It's the Rwandans who are worried that the AMIA is moving out. The AMIA has adopted doctrinal statements and canons that are at odds with an Anglican heritage. If it's not connected with Rwanda, and if it doesn't follow the 39 Articles, and it has a structure that is basically Roman Catholic of being top down entirely, how is it Anglican?
Well, Kevin, great to be with you and with those watching. I originally come from New Zealand. I grew up in the Anglican Church in New Zealand, was part of the Anglican Diocese of Nelson, and then worked with the Barnabas Fund to support suffering Christians before I came to be part of Cana. And The great thing to celebrate in my new ministry is that Cana and ACNA have a shared relationship together. Cana is a founding jurisdiction in the Anglican Church in North America, but continues to be canonically part of the Anglican Church of Nigeria, the Church of Nigeria Anglican Communion. And so that's a great demonstration of what we call this dual relationship, this dual citizenship. We're committed to gospel ministry in North America, to replanting biblical Anglicanism across North America, and to seeing people come to faith through the life-transforming gospel message that the church continues to proclaim. And we're also part of the great move of God the Holy Spirit in the Church of Nigeria. 20 million Anglicans, the largest province in the Anglican communion of worshipping members. And to me, it's just a great privilege to be able to sit in the House of Bishops, both in Nigeria and here in the Anglican Church of North America, which is home. And so I'll be doing a number of things with Cana. Firstly, in the absence of Bishop Martin Minns, when he's in the United Kingdom working with the Global Anglican Ministry, I'll help to give some leadership to Cana stateside. I'll also have an increased role with Anglican 1000. I'll be working closely with Dave Rosebery and Archbishop Bob Duncan to help this replanting movement of churches. I was a church planter myself, involved in the planting of about 3 congregations, and so I have a great heart and passion to see new churches planted. The other thing that I do, which has birthed out of my ministry with the suffering church and Archbishop Duncan's initial challenge to the church when he was instituted as our Archbishop, is to help the church to be equipped in her understanding of a resurgent Islam in North America. And so the Archbishop has asked me to chair the Islam Task Force of the Anglican Church in North America to help our diocese and our jurisdictions understand the great challenge of a resurgent Islam.
Yeah, those are all important ministries that you brought up, especially the Islam one. In the 21st century, we're finding there's a big difference between a radical Christian and a radical Muslim, and a person who professes radical Islamic views. What's going to be the biggest difficulty in that?
There is such a wealth of information that's available in the public domain about Islam. One of the biggest challenges is helping people decipher what is actually accurate information about Islam and what is not. What are accurate Muslim responses and what are not. I continue to believe that the only solution to a world which is racked with pain and violence is the life-transforming gospel message of Jesus Christ. I don't find that in the pages of the Quran that I have read. I don't find that in the hadith, the sayings of the Prophet Muhammad. I see much good in many Muslims, but I don't see and have not been able to find the life-transforming gospel message of the Jesus of the Gospels. And so one of the great challenges is to effectively proclaim that message into a growing Islamic population in North America.
Now, one of the questions I always have to ask a new bishop in the Anglican Church is, what is your jurisdiction? Where do you serve? And more and more we find, I serve in Northern Virginia, or I serve, I can identify my geography. What is your geography?
Well, I think it's important to understand, firstly, that the Anglican Church in North America, through its constitution and canons, is a province that allows both geographical and affinity-based jurisdictions. And the jurisdiction that I'm part of, Cana, the Convocation of Anglicans in North America, which is one of those founding jurisdictions of the Anglican Church in North America, is a non-geographical based jurisdiction. We have parishes, about 100 parishes, that are affiliated in one degree or another with us across the country. And the parishes over which I will be pastorally responsible as a bishop are the parishes, by and large, not quite, but by and large, east of the Mississippi, down the eastern seaboard.
Sure.
And that's why we're here at Bishop Seabury this evening. It's been a pretty tough week for them with regards to their journey and ministry with their building and the court case and their litigation. But we're here to celebrate gospel ministry in this historic place.
Yeah, if the sheriff allows, there's only going to be a few more services here in this church. What is your message to the Episcopalians and Anglicans who are losing their property right now?
We heard very clearly tonight that the message is about declaring the gospel, remaining true to the people that God has called us by serving Him and one another through our gifts, and maintaining personal holiness and integrity. That was the message that was preached tonight. And so for me, the message to the people of Bishop Seabury and other congregations right across North America who are in these very painful and difficult legal situations is keep your focus on the main thing. Buildings are historic, they're helpful, they've enabled us to do much great ministry. If we lose them, the gospel can still be proclaimed. In fact, if you look more broadly across the Anglican communion in places like Nigeria, where I've just recently been, you see the gospel being very effectively proclaimed, where sometimes there are no buildings at all.
Well, you have dioceses without buildings. I mean, it's not just churches, but Nigeria is still rapidly going. You mentioned 20 million, but it's building on top of that daily. I just interviewed Archbishop Ben Kwashi, and he brings nothing but good news. Yes, there's struggles with the Muslims and stuff like that, but nothing but good news of church growth.
Absolutely. And in the midst of trials, in the midst of challenges, whether they be with Islam, whether they be with the legal situation in the United States, whether it be through lack of resources, whatever it may be, if we keep our focus on the main thing, and the main thing in the church's ministry is Jesus and the gospel. I love that old hymn, "Tell me the old story of Jesus and His love for me." And that's the message we proclaim. And when we do that, even in the midst of challenging circumstances, God comes through. Maybe not always the way we want Him to, but He does come through.
He does. And right over your shoulder is a Cana banner. And Anglican TV viewers, pray for you, pray for Cana, and really want God's ministry to come through you. And thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me. God bless you. God bless Anglican TV. Your ministry is greatly important as we continue to replant biblical Anglicanism across North America.
I'm on the other line with my friend Alan Haley, who's on the other side of the coast. And the magic of technology called Skype brings us together to talk about many things. Today we're going to talk about Christian legalese and secular legalese, and how sometimes the seculars get it right when the Christians get it wrong. And it's accountability, it's how you handle situations. Here on the East Coast, Penn State had a big eruption when one of their assistant coaches was found to be abusing children sexually. It's a difficult topic. I don't want to get really into the allegations, but I do want to get into how they handled the situation. Many times in universities, coaches and head coaches are above reproach. You don't find them being fired for any other reason than that they're having losing seasons. Joe Paterno has won more games than any other college coach in history. Holy cow. Okay, so
he was still toast once this news came out, because he had learned of the behavior of his assistant coach, but had not done anything other than just pass it on up the line. And so the university fired him, and they also fired their president, who had gotten the news as well. So in other words, they don't just encourage covering this stuff up or burying it in any way, shape, or form. It's a zero-tolerance policy for that. It's actually a very Christian policy called walking in the light, as John, in his first letter, reminds us that to walk in the light, is to walk in the light of Christ and speak the truth. So we have to contrast how Penn State handled this matter with how the Diocese of Nevada and the Episcopal Church is handling and still stonewalling over the ordination, a reception into that diocese of a defrocked Catholic priest who had been defrocked for multiple acts of sexual abuse with young men.
Yeah, let's cover what we know so far. So far we know that Bede Perry admitted that he's once again offended while he was in the employment of the Episcopal Church. He's admitted that he told Catherine Jefferts Schori that he had offended in the past but had lied about more occurrences. We learned from the head of the abbey where Bede was previously employed that he had told Jeffert the whole story and all the incidents affecting Bede. So there's a lot going on here.
Well, exactly. How could he have met the requirements of the canons then? 3.11, as Bishop Edwards points us to, is a canon that is for receiving ordained ministers who have been ordained in another church, not in communion with the Episcopal Church. That's the Catholic Church. And Bede Perry was ordained into that church. But we also know now from his statement that he put up on the web that at the time he applied to be received into the Bishop Diocese of Nevada, his Catholic credentials had been canceled, revoked, dismissed, with his cooperation. So he could not have been truthful with the people in Nevada as far as telling them what his background was, because he admitted that he had no valid credentials and was not currently a valid Catholic priest who had exercised his ministry for at least 5 years with very good repute of godly and moral character and all these other requirements that the canon required him to provide evidence for. He should never, ever have been received, and I can't imagine how Bishop Jefferts Schori, managed to work her way around the canons in that fact. And
well, one of the issues we have is canonically she's been off the hook. Okay, so what if I hired a pedophile and it was his job to tell me he was a pedophile. It was the abbot's job to inform me what was going on. I wasn't getting all the right information, and even if I did get the right information, what canons hold me accountable for that?
Well, correct. The canons themselves do not quite impose mandatory duties on bishops, but the Constitution of the Episcopal Church does in Article 8. There are at least 3 mandatory duties in that paragraph 8 that Catherine Jefferts Schori violated if she allowed Bede Perry to become a priest despite these proofs of his prior sexual abuses and bad moral character, as the abbot would have told her. So it looks at this point as though she has definitely violated Constitution Article 8. I'm going to have a more detailed post about this up on my website, the Curmudgeon website, on Monday, and I'll explain all chapter and verse, but it's pretty clear at this point she needs to be called into account. She needs to come into the light and explain exactly what she did and how she made the judgment calls that she must have made in order to ignore Bede Perry's background.
Now, we have a problem here because the Episcopal Church clergy and bishops watch Anglican Unscripted. At this point, they've been informed by a lawyer that Catherine Jefferts Schori has violated canonical law. Bede Perry has admitted it. It's well documented. If I'm not mistaken, the new Title IV now requires clergy and bishops to, what are they supposed to do?
Well, they're mandated to report instances of violations of the canons, Constitution, and in the case of bishops, they have to report it to Bishop Clayton Matthews, who is in the Office of Pastoral Development in the Episcopal Church in North Carolina.
Well, I'll do my job here. This is the email you should send this report to. And once again, Alan, I want to thank you for your time, and I know we'll have more legal news next week, but we want to keep Bede Perry, we want to keep this whole situation at Penn State in our prayers, because there's victims here.
Exactly.
And it's one thing to go around calling people monsters. It's another thing to minister to the victims.
Hi, I'm Phil Ashey from the American Anglican Council with your weekly Anglican Perspective. Today I want to talk about some disturbing allegations, two in fact. One is about a football coach, an assistant football coach at Penn State University, who's alleged to have engaged in sexual abuse with minors. The second, of course, is the ongoing story of how the presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church allowed a known pedophile to be admitted into the Episcopal priesthood from the Roman Catholic Church. Both of these allegations, if true, illustrate a major problem that we have which is, as human beings, as fallen human beings, of covering up. This kind of behavior is characteristic of fallen humanity, of the Garden of Eden, where Adam and Eve, in response to their known sinfulness, denied it, covered themselves up, ran from God, and pointed the finger at each other. That's exactly the dynamics that are going on in these kinds of cover-ups. But that's not what the people of God are called to be. We're called to be transparent. We're called to be children of the light, people who constantly walk in the light. In fact, John, that beloved apostle, wrote from Patmos to the people that he was serving in 1 John 1:7. If we walk in the light as he is in the light, we have fellowship with one another, and the blood of Jesus cleanses us from all our sins. Fellowship and cleansing. Those are the benefits of being transparent, of being humble enough to bring even our sins into the light, to confess them before God, and to walk in the light with each other. That's been the heart of the East African revival in Anglicanism, and it is a value that we need to continue to promote, observe, and walk in, that we may have fellowship with each other, and that the body of Christ may be not only one, but may be cleansed of all of its sins.
Let's go back. I guess we've been doing international news all day so far. Let's go international from England to New Zealand. News out of New Zealand is certain sections of the diocese there rejects the covenant. There's technicalities there because it's not the whole diocese that's rejecting it, or province. Give us the lowdown there.
Well, the Church of New Zealand is called the Church of Aotearoa, New Zealand and Polynesia. Aotearoa is the Maori group, and they have 5 episcopal units, or dioceses they're called. The Church of New Zealand has 7 dioceses, and then the Church of Polynesia has 1 diocese. Each of those strands of the New Zealand Church have a veto over the whole legislation. And the 5 Maori episcopal units, or dioceses, gathered together last week to discuss the covenant, and they have voted not to accept it. They've rejected it, and because they've rejected it, it's basically a done deal that all of New Zealand must reject it.
Right, and so what we have here now, 2 or 3 years after this covenant is proposed, we can count more people. It's easier to count the people who've accepted it than it is to count the people who've rejected it. The numbers are astonishing.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that, you know, we've seen the GAFCON primates say they don't like it. We've seen Sydney, Diocese of Sydney say reject it. We've seen American dioceses say no on the liberal side. And now New Zealand is rejecting it. I just think the covenant is dead in the water.
Now, if I remember correctly, Rowan's put a lot of effort into this covenant, and it's failed pretty miserably. And it was his one saving grace for his tenure as Archbishop of Canterbury. Now it seems to me last week or the last 2 weeks, he's trying to look for something else to be noticeable for, to be noted for, and he's taking a pull into the, a nice walk or stroll into what we call the Robin Hood tax. And I don't think that's going to be a winner for him either.
No, I mean, Rowan Williams has a side of his personality that I would describe as being sort of a pacifist, socialist, weird-beard, vegetarian, 70s hippie. Nothing wrong with that.
No.
But when he gives economic advice that's sort of dumb, it diminishes his whole person. In other words, if you tax the City of London, if you tax financial transactions that take place in the investment banking houses of London, it does not mean that you will make money by taxing. It means the banking houses will move their operations to New York, Hong Kong, Singapore. They'll move.
No, and that's precisely the thing. We had today's gospel reading was the parable of the talents. To each is given something different. but each person is responsible for what they are given. And you could have reversed it. The person with 10 talents could have buried his, and the person with 5 and 1 had grown theirs. It doesn't matter how much you've been given, you are responsible for what you were given. And that is a constant in Christendom. We all have our responsibilities, and we see all these Occupy Wall Streets, Occupy London, and we have this entitlement generation that doesn't believe that they're responsible for what they're given. They want to be given more. And in Christendom, we are responsible for what we're given, and we're responsible for the poor. It's a strange dichotomy, but if I've been given something by God, I need to be responsible for how that is disseminated into my family, my life, the church, the community, my neighbors, and everything else behind it. I don't need a government or an entity to do that for me. That is my responsibility. If I want to die a greedy bastard, that's my choice. If I want to die a faithful Christian person here in America, that is my choice too, to be a servant to the Lord. I don't need the government to be a go-between to be for my Christendom.
And British government policy has destroyed Britain's industrial base. Britain at one time was the leading manufacturer of the world. That's gone. One of the things that has kept Britain afloat over the past few decades is its financial service industries. And if the government, on the urging of the Archbishop of Canterbury and liberal leaders, decides to slit the throat of the financial services industry, what's going to be left for England? Not everybody can go on welfare.
No, and we've already got the post-Christian Europe. What's going to be post-economic Europe? It's going to be pretty sad. We're going to have the fall of Greece, the fall of Italy, and everything else will be a domino effect. We can talk about more of this later, but just keep your eye on what's happening and compare it to what the Gospels say and who's responsible. The government is not responsible for the poor. The Christians are. All right, episode 18 is in the can, as they say. You've got to watch George and I discuss Rwanda and EMEA. You've got to see an interview I did with the new bishop, Julian Dobbs. You got to see a nice Anglican perspective from the AAC. And you got to hear more news about Rowan Williams. He's really kind of what keeps us going, isn't it, George?
Well, he keeps me gainfully employed.
Yes, he does. Another thing that keeps us going is you spreading the news about Anglican Unscripted. The more people that know about us and can watch us can really keep abreast of what's happening in the news. We cover international stories and we cover domestic stories. Anglicanism in the last 60 years has exploded. Here in America, watching Anglicanism be replanted, something that's never happened before. And, you know, George and I are here to report on that. Sure, we do our occasional Rowan story and we do our occasional covenant story, but in gross, we're here to really shed light on what's really happening in Anglicanism. But there's something far more important, and that's your feedback. George, why do we need their feedback?
Well, from your feedback, we are able to make corrections when we're wrong, and also to work on new stories that are brought to our attention. But Kevin, I'd like to share one thing that I think viewers may not know, is that before you and I begin filming, we pray together. We ask God to guard us and guide us and not let our own voices, our own hearts, our own desires drive what we talk about, but be faithful to the truth. It's hard. It's easy to go off on a tangent. But we try to be faithful, and we need your prayers as well as your feedback to keep us on the straight and narrow.
Yeah. There's many purposes to Anglican Unscripted, but the biggest purpose is to shine light in darkness. Things that are broken and stay in darkness can't be fixed. And by shining a light, not my light, not George's light, but shining the light of Christ and the gospel, opening up what is being hidden, allows things to be fixed and healed. And there's so much that here in this world, Anglican and un-Anglican, that can be healed by bringing it into the light. And if you send us emails to AnglicanUnscripted@gmail.com, we receive that, and you can find more information and respond to our videos at www.facebook.com/AnglicanTV. I'm Kevin Carlson.
And I'm George Conger.
And thank you for watching episode 18.